This is the story of the real Jesus Christ, the brutal world he lived in, the forces that shaped the man and his mission, and how he went from being a humble workman to a charismatic leader with thousands of followers and a revolutionary message. History and archaeology can now unearth where Jesus preached, what influenced his teachings, and science can reveal how Jesus might have looked as an adult. Jesus, a people's crusader on a lethal collision course with the Roman Empire. Three biblical experts have journeyed to the Holy Land to uncover the real world of Jesus. Biblical studies expert Rachel Haverlock, archaeologist Byron McCain, and theologian and Baptist minister Alan Callahan are unearthing remarkable evidence about the man and his times. Rachel and Alan have come to the desert near the River Jordan, a key place in the young Jesus' life. The Jordan has long played a central role in the history of the Jewish people. It was here the river parted for Joshua and the Israelites. Here the prophet Elijah was taken up to heaven in a chariot of fire.
The Jordan's always been a place where people have kind of physical encounters with God.
Even today, it's a popular pilgrim site. "2,000 years ago, according to the Gospels, Jesus too was a pilgrim. He walked 90 miles to the River Jordan from his hometown of Nazareth. He was already an unconventional young man. He hadn't married or become a tradesman like his father. Perhaps he was restless, looking to right the wrongs of his world and his times. And he'd come to the Jordan to find his way. The greatest prophet of the day was John the Baptist. John offered an alternative to the state religion run by the priesthood in Jerusalem. John the Baptist was described by the Jewish historian Josephus, who wrote just a few decades later.
He was a good man and commanded the Jews to exercise virtue and come to baptism. Many came in crowds and were greatly moved by his words.
John had a simple idea, which in first century Palestine was novel and liberating. Jewish law dictated that the faithful, to stay spiritually pure, needed to perform regular ritual bathing. John said that if people wanted to repent of their sins and be saved by God, all they had to do was be baptized once by him.
This guy comes along and he says, you don't need a priest. You don't need temple. You don't need sacrifice. You don't need a king. You don't need to go to town. All you need to do is get wet and wait. And it's absolutely brilliant in its simplicity.
The gospel suggests Jesus was attracted to this revolutionary idea.
Imagine Jesus as a young man, unhappy with the situation in his time and hungry for change and wanting to leave home and become part of some movement advocating for change. At the time, the Baptist movement was the biggest thing happening, and it would make sense that such a young man would come to be a part of it.
Jesus' encounter with John was so significant that two of the Gospels take it as the starting point of the Jesus story. The Gospels say that John instantly recognized Jesus as the Son of God and bowed down before him. Historical sources relate that at the time, John the Baptist was enjoying huge popularity, so much so that the authorities feared he might be stirring up a rebellion. John had deliberately made his base on the east bank of the River Jordan, just outside Roman-controlled territory. This region was ruled by Herod Antipas, the Romans' puppet king. Herod could have left John, a fellow Jew, alone. He presented no military threat. But Herod was uneasy.
Anybody who came out here with a mass following was going to be suspect in those circumstances.
The Romans demanded that Herod keep order, so he decided to use John to send a warning to all religious subversives. John's execution actually happened. It was recorded by the Roman historian Josephus. The gospel writer Mark later added the detail that Herod's stepdaughter Salome demanded that John's bloody head be brought to her on a platter.
His death is so bloody and so disturbing. The image of this prophet beheaded with his head on a platter is upsetting to our modern sensibilities, and for his followers must have been a tremendous tragedy and loss.
John's execution affected one of his followers above all, in a most profound way. The Gospel of Mark suggests that this was the moment Jesus became a leader in his own right. He took over John's message and his flock. But there was a key difference between the two men.
John stayed closer to the water. His stock and trade was the baptism here along the Jordan, whereas John assiduously avoided populated areas. Jesus took that show on the road.
Jesus wanted to take his message to the people, to his kind of people. So we headed back to Galilee, to a major fishing town called Capernaum. Today, Capernaum attracts pilgrims, as it has for centuries, and many Holy Land tourists. A modern church on stilts sits over the spot where Jesus is said to have stayed. To understand why Jesus chose Capernaum, Byron McCain has come here to meet fellow archaeologist Jonathan Reed.
It's a great place to visit. It's a pilgrim site, archaeological Disneyland in a way. People have been coming here since the 4th century.
Tradition has it that the mother-in-law of Peter the Apostle lived here, and that it was a pilgrimage center for the earliest Christians.
To get to the real thing down there, the 1st century, whether we're talking about the building or the historical Jesus, you have to strip all of this away and get at the kernel.
And what's kernel here is a pretty ordinary Galilean 1st century house.
Well, I'm pretty skeptical of virtually every single holy site in the Holy Land, but I think it's quite possible that something happened here. What? I'm not sure.
There were good reasons for choosing Capernaum as the base for his fledgling ministry.
Capernaum, if you look at it, is right on the border. It's a fringe region, and it has the sea. I would kind of describe it as a great place to get away from.
I mean, Herod Antipas had already put to death, by the time Jesus' ministry starts, had already put to death John the Baptist. So Jesus knows, maybe I don't want to have that fate befall me.
If he gets into trouble, if he attracts too large of a crowd, if he attracts some attention, walks a couple of miles, and he's out of Herod Antipas's jurisdiction.
But as long as he was in Capernaum, Jesus was inside hostile territory. Across the water lay the long, dark shadow of Rome. Tiberias, a city built by Herod Antipas to honor the Roman occupiers.
You look right there and you know that it has an impact. That's where the rulers are. The people in Capernaum, when they see the houses over there, it's a wealthier place. The wealthy live there. They know what's going on. They knew that Rome was on the horizon.
Jesus' teachings often pointed to the growing gap between the wealthy and the poor. In Capernaum, he had a ready audience among the town's poor fishermen.
They're on the margins of society. Their existence is very, very perilous. Fishing typically was heavily taxed. You'd have to pay a fee to get a boat out onto the water. So you would work very, very hard. And the kinds of people that were attracted to fishing, it was a rough crowd, maybe sort of like longshoremen today.
From among these poor, rough men, Jesus would recruit the team that would help him forge a new world religion. When Jesus returned from his journey to the River Jordan, he settled in the town of Capernaum and began to recruit disciples from among the ranks of poor fishermen. The Gospels tell us that the first two he enlisted were the brothers Simon Peter and Andrew.
They were fishermen. And he said to them, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men."
Invites them to give up everything to follow him. It's in a way something they jump to do.
They just drop everything and do.
Well, they drop everything and follow him, but they don't really have that much.
The archaeological evidence for the fishermen's poverty is compelling. In 1986, a wooden fishing boat was discovered in the mud of the Sea of Galilee. It was dated to the 1st century, making it nearly 2,000 years old.
The people who built it had very poor material at their disposal, mostly pine, which is not what you want to build a boat out of.
The Galilee fishermen did everything they could to keep their boat seaworthy, patching it up with any bits of wood they could get hold of. And when the boat's life ran out, they stripped it and sank it. The local fishermen weren't the only potential recruits for Jesus in Capernaum. It was a trading town, just the kind of place that attracted young male drifters from the countryside.
If you look at it strictly from a demographic perspective, there's an awful lot of what I would call marginal males. Young men that can't get married because they don't own land. And so very often what they do is they move from smaller villages to larger towns or even cities.
Throughout his life, Jesus had observed how poor people like himself were powerless under Roman domination. They felt the yoke daily, in their bellies and in their pockets.
So one of the ways in which that Roman presence gets felt is through taxation. And the Gospels talk about tax collectors and even a customs house here at Capernaum.
Customs men and tax collectors worked on commission, fleecing ordinary working people for everything they could grab. taxes on exports, imports, and on goods in the market. In some places, there was a head tax, a tax simply because you existed. Farmers had to pay a land tax, around 12.5% of the annual value of their crops. For Jews, paying money to the Romans was infuriating. Rachel Haverlock met with Jewish history professor Jack Pastor, who has studied how a typical man was taxed in first-century Galilee.
So we're getting close to 30% was already taken by various authorities before we even get down to making a living. And if you take into consideration the man probably was in some sort of debt, you could see that a lot of people would be on the border of subsistence.
How much resentment do you think there was on the part of different people of the Galilee towards paying this tax to the Romans?
You have this civilization that has conquered you, that you oppose their values, and now you have to pay them?
This growing bitterness was directed not just at the Romans. It was sometimes aimed at their own ruling class. The Jewish priestly elite charged another 15% for religious obligations, and the collection of tithes, shares of a farmer's produce, could be ruthlessly enforced. The historian Josephus described the aggressive tactics used by one Jewish high priest.
He had servants who were very wicked and took away the tithes by violence, and did not refrain from beating those who would not give these tithes to them.
Jewish high priests and the powerful Romans may have confiscated people's food and money, but worse, when imperial forces flaunted the cult of Rome, they deeply insulted devout Jews. Near Capernaum, Professor Richard Freund believes he has unearthed a Roman temple to Caesar's wife Livia Julia, built by Herod Antipas's brother Philip to honor his foreign masters.
This temple was functioning at exactly the same time that Jesus and the apostles were meeting for the first time.
The temple's architecture was strongly imperial and would have been visible from afar.
What would they have seen every single day as they went out with their boats to the Sea of Galilee? They wouldn't see a synagogue. They wouldn't see a Jewish temple. They saw a Roman temple with plumes of this incense. And the fishermen who lived in this village must have felt that this was an invasion of their religious sensibilities.
The poor people of Galilee felt the sting of betrayal by their own weak leaders and hatred for the Roman occupiers. Jesus of Nazareth was determined to offer them an alternative, a message of hope. But that would set him on a collision course with the most powerful man in all of Palestine, the Roman governor, Pôncio Pilate. Caesarea Maritima was a shining Roman-style city by the sea. Built by Herod the Great in 20 BC, it was the greatest display of wealth and power in Palestine. The Romans adopted it as the capital of Judea. Pôncio Pilate took over Herod's palace here as his headquarters. Alan Callahan has come to see the life of luxury enjoyed by the Roman occupiers.
So this is the Hippodrome, the chariot racing stadium, specially constructed for horse racing, which was the Formula One of the ancient world.
The great palace of Pôncio Pilate dominated the shoreline. The contrast between Jesus' poor lifestyle and Pilate's home was striking.
It's two tiers. We see the upper tier here. There's a lower tier that opens up directly to the sea. Well, we can see here the outline of the pool still. He could wake up every morning and look out at the pool, take a dip whenever he wanted to. It's a perfect location. A lot of opulence. No expense was spared.
Pontius Pilate's fabulous lifestyle was only possible because of the lives of hard labor endured by the country's poor.
All of the raw materials, the fruit of the natural fecundity of the land winds up in imperial hands, winds up in imperial markets. The country makes and the city takes. The pain of this arrangement was clearly felt by everyone up and down Palestine.
Jesus, with his disciples, was going to tackle that pain. He was going to turn the world of rich and poor upside down. As a preacher, Jesus could easily have settled in wealthy towns like Caesarea Maritima and courted rich patrons. But he would have known from his own experience how Roman occupation had affected ordinary Jews. From boyhood onwards, he'd seen how the lust for money could bring misery, and he now preached one stunning and totally new message: that to be poor was good.
Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust consume, and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven. You cannot serve God and wealth.
Overturning the old order was to be accomplished through a non-violent revolution, with only one weapon: love.
You have heard that it was said, "You shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy." But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you.
And Jesus went further than mere words. He began to seek out and embrace the despised, prostitutes, sinners, the sick. According to the Gospels, he even ate at the same table as the most reviled man in society, the tax collector.
These are not the kind of people you would invite to your Sabbath table, because a person would really see them as their oppressors. So Jesus explicitly articulates his problem with tax collectors, but at the same time, he doesn't ostracize them or marginalize them. Instead, he says, this is where part of our societal problem lies, and I'm going to bring them into the movement, and I'm going to deal with this whole problem in a different way.
Jesus saw that the downtrodden people of Palestine yearned for change. He was going to lead them out of repression by offering a whole new way of looking at the world.
What gets really interesting is when we start seeing the connections between economic conditions here and the teaching of Jesus. For example, give us this day our daily bread in the Lord's Prayer.
God will provide. That was Jesus' message, and he would prove it by feeding the people, by curing the sick, by casting out demons, all in the name of God. The Gospels tell us that Jesus had become a hugely popular preacher and a miracle worker. But in first century Galilee, he was not alone.
Jesus is one among several. So in his own time, for what we know of his time, yes, clearly he was extraordinary. But no, he was not unique.
Life in Jesus' time was harsh. Disease, famine, and drought were extremely common. In the absence of science or medicine, people clamored for miracles. One of the most popular miracle workers of the time was a rainmaker named Honi the Circle Drawer. Having drawn a circle in the earth, Honi stood inside and refused to move until God intervened. Miracle workers like Honi are still revered by many Jews today. Their tombs are popular shrines where people come to pray for favors from God. At Honi's tomb in the town of Hatzor Haglalit, Rachel Haverlock met Kim Stratton, an expert in ancient magic and religion.
How do you account for the popularity of Honi the circle drawer?
Well, we know that there were accounts of him having miraculous power. I mean, he drew the circle and basically commanded God. He importuned God to make it rain. He was known for having some sort of relationship with God that was unique.
Farmers and peasants, desperate for rain to grow their crops, would crowd around as Honi went to work. Another first-century miracle worker was Hanina ben Dosa. His miracles were of a different kind.
Hanina is known most for kind of private miracles, so praying for a particular person or the son or daughter of a particular person, and that person getting well. Hanina is perhaps more similar to Jesus, right, and who also, performed, hands-on kind of healing, right, or, through prayer or through touching his garment.
Such healing was entirely accepted in first-century Palestine. The supernatural world was very much part of everyday life.
There wasn't this separation that this is science and this is miracle or this is religion. The world was populated by angels, by demons.
And in Jesus' world, demons were the cause of disease. In the Gospel of Mark, a father brings his son who is having seizures to Jesus. Previous attempts to exorcise the demon within have failed. But Jesus tells the father all things are possible if he truly believes.
Jesus rebuked the unclean spirit, saying to it, "You spirit that keeps this boy from speaking and hearing, I command you, come out of him and never enter him again."
The need for healing was enormous. The ancient world was plagued by disease and death on a massive and terrifying scale.
People in the ancient world lived a hard life, and we know this was a malarial region. So people are probably sick 1/5 to 1/4 of their life, often with malaria or other malaria-induced diseases. People died at staggering rates compared to today. 50% of all people were dead by the age of 5.
Such astonishing levels of disease and mortality have been confirmed by forensic science. Physical anthropologist Israel Hershkovitz revealed to Byron McCain evidence of the most horrifying and rampant of first-century diseases.
This is leprosy. Actually, what you can see over here is that the soft tissue is dying and the bones are being remodeled, and slowly, you lose your fingers, you lose your toes and fingers and so on. So this is what you see. This is a typical...
This is a foot that's sort of falling off from the toes.
Yes, that's what happened in leprosy. You start with the edges. There is no other diseases in the Bible that receives so much attention as leprosy. I think there are at least 8 chapters just dedicated to leprosy.
The Gospel of Mark tells of Jesus curing a leper in the very first chapter.
Zulu Amen, Girmashin Nishahanaya.
The belief that Jesus could cure leprosy was taken as a potent sign, evidence that God worked through the miracle man. There was a great expectation brewing that the people would soon be delivered from their suffering.
So there's this tension in the air and there's an expectation, and so this is a time where all of these figures come to the fore, and the way that they attempt to prove themselves to the public is through working some kind of miracles.
Exactly.
So then the miracles aren't only events in and of themselves, they're signs of what is upon people or what is to come.
And something was about to happen. Jesus' miracles were fast gaining him a reputation. Conflict and confrontation with the authorities awaited this charismatic young man. But can we ever know what Jesus actually looked like? Modern science may be able to provide a tantalizing glimpse. The Gospels tell us that Jesus had the power of healing, and that this attracted many followers. But historical accounts from the time revealed the perils of being a popular miracle worker. Theudas, another contemporary of Jesus, proves the point. According to the Roman historian Josephus, Theudas persuaded a large crowd of believers to follow him to the river Jordan and told them he would command the river to divide so they could easily cross it. Like John the Baptist before him, Theudas in his popularity unnerved the authorities. And also, as with John, it wasn't long before they caught up with him. Theudas' barbaric fate was a warning to all aspiring miracle workers. Lest the warning go unheeded, Theudas' severed head was carried off to Jerusalem. Parting a river's waters was good for show, but Jesus was speaking to people's deepest needs.
He's got an agenda. Free food, free medical care, free education. And with that agenda, he's not just transforming individuals. There's something much bigger going on here.
He also gains a kind of a political power by amassing these followers here.
Jesus' wonder-working and his unorthodox teachings were stirring up increasing numbers of the deprived and dispossessed of Galilee. As a result, according to the Gospels, Jesus too was now attracting dangerously large crowds. His disciples hit on a clever solution.
Crowd control has become a problem. He wants to talk to the people, but he's about to be crushed by the press of the crowd. So the disciples arrange a little boat for him. He gets in the boat, and he speaks to the people on the shore from the boat.
To attract such crowds, Jesus must have been an accomplished orator. But can we ever really know what he looked like? Church paintings and sculptures from the Middle Ages in Europe have given us many faces of Jesus. None are derived from his world and his time. Science can now get us much closer to the truth. To understand how men in this time and place actually looked, Byron McCain consulted physical anthropologist Israel Hershkovitz. His extensive examination of skulls from first-century Galilee suggests that the population had a distinctive appearance.
The actual face is smaller and much slender than in other populations, like European populations or African populations, very slender. But it is very typical to our region.
Using a state-of-the-art CT scanner, Hershkovitz can produce a 3D image of a typical Galilean skull. Software can then accurately recreate the structure of muscle and sinew on the face of this person from 2,000 years ago. A man who came from the same tight-knit genetic pool as Jesus.
There is a scientific way, very accurate way to do it because we have standards, you know, how thick the muscles are, how thick the skin, how much fat we have to put in different areas of the face. So eventually, you will get the face.
The underlying structure of the face that would be produced that way would be a structure that represents what was most typical and ordinary at the time of Jesus.
The skin of poor working men at the time of Jesus would have been weather-beaten, and historical sources state that their hair and beards were cropped short to protect against lice. As the forensic artists complete their reconstruction, we can, for the first time, start to get a scientific glimpse of what Jesus might have looked like. Somehow, a poor man probably much like this one created a following that would one day blossom into a worldwide religion. Jesus offered an alternative to the mainstream religion. But he was not content preaching only to followers in his power base in Galilee. He decided to confront those at the heart of the problem, the priests in Jerusalem. It was a fatal decision. Jesus had one simple, overarching message. It both addressed and confronted the cruel, unjust time and place in which he lived. He said there was a different world to come.
Jesus comes out at this time and he says, okay, let's gather everyone together and let's aspire for a very different sort of kingdom, one that's not here. Let's suffer this world so that we can go to the next one.
Jesus called the world to come the kingdom of God.
He pictures this day when life will be rich and full and good, and he wraps it up in this phrase, kingdom of God.
Jesus explained his kingdom of God, or kingdom of heaven, in what's called the Sermon on the Mount. Its location is contradicted in the Gospels. Matthew talks of a mountain, Luke of a plain. But today's scholars believe a single sermon in a single place is unlikely.
It makes more sense that the early Christians collected Jesus' sayings in bits and pieces, and Matthew puts together this beautiful compilation to really introduce, in his terms, what he thought Jesus' teaching was really all about.
A collection of Jesus' sayings, known as the Beatitudes, took the world as it existed and turned it upside down.
Lakishmaya, Diwen Yadhan, Yud Arya, Tuvayan, Lelen Didrdafu, Begin, Zadikuta, Leden Didrdafu, Zagn, Zadikuta. Didon, Di Malshutam, Makeshmaya.
Instead of things happening among the privileged, among the prestigious, among the powerful, God is going to do things on the periphery, to the least, the lowest, the left out.
Jesus' kingdom of heaven promised eternal salvation to the poor peasants and fishermen of his ravaged homeland. But to those in power, when Jesus said it was easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to get into heaven, he was being provocative and revolutionary.
Jesus has really uncomfortable things to say to those who do hold wealth and power and privilege. And pretty consistently, the message to the wealthy and influential and powerful is pretty clear. You have to give up what you have. This new order, the kingdom of God, is going to call on you to let that go. Don't hang on to it. Don't even try to hang on to it.
And the time to let go had come. Whether he knew it or not, Jesus was putting his teachings and his life on the line by striking out for Jerusalem, the occupied capital of Judea. From the gospel accounts, Jesus' entrance into Jerusalem was an extraordinary piece of theater, one loaded with symbolic meaning.
He comes in peace. That's what it means to ride in on a donkey. You know, if you enter the city in a rickshaw, that's different from entering the city in a tank.
Entering the city on a donkey. The Torah, the Jewish Bible, said the Messiah, the liberator, would enter Jerusalem in exactly that way.
So when Jesus enters Jerusalem on a donkey, he comes in to announce himself as a prophet, making a statement of radical reform and change. And this was the center. If you wanted the people to reform, you said it from Jerusalem.
To herald his arrival, Jesus' supporters waved palm fronds, which were, for the Jews, a symbol of liberation from oppression.
That imagery there, in the Gospel of John especially, is politically provocative. It's the ancient Israelite equivalent of the Black Power sign or something like that, you know, in the 68 Olympics or something.
Jesus was openly defying the Jewish puppet king Herod Antipas and the priesthood. He was now in great peril. Today, in Jerusalem, tourists flock to the sites of Jesus' famous final days. Byron, Alan, and Rachel are going to investigate whether those locations have any basis in fact. Can archaeology now reveal the actual place where Jesus was arrested and tried? And can science unlock the secrets of the crucifixion?